We're following multiple breaking stories, including new attacks on the Republican plan to repeal and replace Obamacare, even though President Trump says he's proud of the plan and Republican leaders are promising quick action. It already is under lots of fire, not only by Democrats, but by many conservative Republicans as well. Let's bring in our political experts. Gloria, Paul Ryan, the Speaker, he guaranteed that the 218 votes needed to pass it, the House of Representatives, would be there. But a lot of people are not so sure. There are plenty of Republicans who are worried about it in the House from the right, but there's a whole bunch of Republicans in the Senate who are worried that it simply cuts too much and a lot of their constituents are going to be left without health insurance.
What did President Trump say? It's unbelievably complicated. Yeah. Well, it is.
Who knew?
Who knew? Who knew it was so complicated? It is. And I think what you saw Paul Ryan trying to do and what you see Mitch McConnell trying to do on the Senate side is get this bill through as quickly as they possibly can, because the more scrutiny it undergoes, the more difficult it will be to get it passed. We have not had, for example, the price tag for it. We don't know what it's going to cost yet. That takes a little bit of time to figure out. We don't know, as the Congressional Budget Office takes a look at it, we don't know what's going to be the rise, if any, in the copays, in your deductibles, what it's going to do to the Medicare Trust Fund, and how many less people would be served, how many less people would have health insurance, or would more people have health insurance. So we don't have all the numbers. And what we do know is that conservatives don't like it because they think you're starting a new entitlement plan and that they think this looks too much like Obamacare. But the leaders want to push it through because they want to give the president a win.
With the conservative Republicans opposed, it faces a steep climb to get to that 218 number in the House of Representatives, despite the Speaker saying he guarantees it will. But you know what? It faces an even steeper climb in the Senate to get to 51 that you need right away.
It does. A mix of different kinds of Republican senators who are expressing some concerns. You have the Mike Lee, Rand Paul, Ted Cruz crowd, what Gloria was just talking about sort of the conservative critique. But then you have the Rob Portmans, the Shelley Moore Capitos, who are really concerned about the Medicaid expansion. Do you want to get that?
No, sorry.
Get the Medicaid expansion and keep that expansion going for their states. But before you get to the Senate, Wolf, the House is where this game is right now, and it really does face a steep climb. My inbox, as I'm sure yours was, flooded. Club for Growth, Freedom Works, Heritage Foundation. These are all the conservative groups. I keep thinking to myself, Nancy Pelosi, Barack Obama, and Harry Reid must be like popping the popcorn, sitting back, because 8 years ago, they were fighting with their left flank on public option and watching this and the intra-party battle to get Obamacare through. And now it's Donald Trump and Paul Ryan's turn.
Because in the Senate, if there's three Republicans who bolt, it's over, because no Democrats are going to go along with this, as far as I can tell.
No.
You know, Ryan, you wrote an article about the Speaker in the New Yorker today. I read it. Let me read a sentence or two from it. If Ryan, you're talking about the Speaker, Paul Ryan, can rush and muscle it through the House, and Mitch McConnell can do the same in the Senate, it might end up on Trump's desk. But the more scrutiny this House bill is subject to, the more likely it is to share the fate of most efforts at health care reform and die somewhere on its journey to the Senate, and perhaps long before then. If his health care reform effort fails, Ryan himself may not survive as the House leader. And you heard his flat guarantee it will pass the House.
Yeah, look, I mean, I think I was sort of surprised today by the reaction from the right. As David pointed out, all of the important grassroots conservative groups came out against this bill. The Freedom Caucus represents about 40 members of the House of Representatives, 40 Republicans. A lot of their members came out against it. So you would have expected, after all of these years and making this the first legislative priority of the Trump era, that the Republican Party would be more unified around this bill. I mean, in 2009, the Democrats, and they barely passed that bill, right? When Ted Kennedy died and Scott Brown replaced him, they barely got that thing across the finish line. And they were united on the basic plan, despite some of the disagreements they had on the minutia. This is a very ominous sign today that there is that much friction, and you've got it from the middle and from the right.
So
You've got
quickly,
people-
right, is Paul Ryan's speakership on the line right now?
Look, you have a faction of the Republican Party that wasn't crazy about him and has been, didn't think he was tough enough against Obama, and that faction is still active and looking for excuses to damage him. So I think the Republican speaker is always has a bit of a precarious position considering what happened to John Boehner. And the same people that helped overthrow John Boehner are the ones today that are very critical, and they're calling this Ryan care, and they don't mean it in a positive sense.
You know, the president today, Gloria, he warmly welcomed, he virtually endorsed the House leadership health care reform package, but a lot of people think it's dead on arrival. Do you?
Well, I think if they push it through quickly, they have more of a chance than if it sits out there. And I don't know if they're going to be able to push it through quickly.
Well, they got to wait till the Congressional Budget Office, they score
No, they're
it.
not waiting. They're not waiting.
They have to get an estimate how much it's going to cost. What?
There won't be a vote on the floor of the House.
Right, but they want to push it through committee pretty quickly, and they're not having a huge number of hearings. They're going to mark up, and they're going to, do that in committee. So I think they understand that the longer it sits out there, the more of a problem it is. But John Boehner, I mean, Ryan's talking about Boehner. Boehner always says Republicans never agreed on health care. They never agreed what to do about health care. And guess what? Now that they're running the place, they're still not agreeing about what to do.
You say they want to jam it
healthcare.
through right now. David Chalian, listen to this. This is 2009, 2010. When Obamacare was on the table, and Republicans had this to say about the process that was unfolding.
They are saying, ignore the wishes of the American people. We know more about this than you do, and we're going to jam it down your throats.
My colleagues in Congress are going to continue on their march to shove this government-run health care plan down the throats of the American people.
It would be a political kamikaze mission for the Democratic Party if they jam this through.
Well, now it looks like the Republicans want to jam this through.
What's old is new again. I mean, listen, there's a political imperative here, and Donald Trump identified it today when he was meeting with folks at the White House, the deputy whips and the folks that are going to be rallying these votes. If the Republicans cannot go back to the country and say, we have repealed Obamacare, Donald Trump said there's going to be a bloodbath for his party in 2018 in the midterm elections. And that's true. They have won election after election, cycle after cycle, 2010, 2014, 2016, all on this promise of repeal. So to Gloria's point, they do need to move quickly, because if it does falter, it really could be quite damaging politically for the Republican Party.
And for the president.
Yeah.
Don't forget that. Yeah.
And yet the argument of the conservatives who already don't like this bill, what was their argument about Boehner, and what was the thing that they got out of Speaker Ryan to put him in that position? They got promises that they would not rush legislation through, that it would go through so-called regular order. So, it is true that speed is the best way to get something through, but in this case, to win that right flank, speed may actually push some of those folks off.
Let's talk quickly about the president's unsubstantiated claim that President Obama wiretapped his phones at Trump Tower in New York City. The White House once again refusing to provide any backup to the president's assertions Saturday morning. How long can the White House avoid at least providing some evidence to back that up?
Well, I think their belief is that they've now shunted it aside, that they've now squarely said, okay, it's up to Congress. Sean Spicer today said this is what the separation of powers is about. We believe in that. And they believe that way they don't have to address it. But as long as journalists keep asking the question, Sean Spicer is going to have to keep answering it. And there are people on Capitol Hill who are saying, as you saw today, that so far we haven't seen any evidence of what the president was talking about. And the White House will keep saying, well, push harder, when we know, in fact, that the president could end the controversy by simply telling people what the evidence is that he has.
It's fascinating that the Republican chairman of both intelligence committees said today they've seen no evidence to back up what the president tweeted.
Yeah, and the House Intel Chair, Devin Nunes, went even further to say, well, the president's a political neophyte, so he doesn't seem to know what he's talking about here, perhaps, or he doesn't know his way around. What? He's the president of the United States, and he put out this statement that had totally no evidence, and of course the White House is not going to be able to put out evidence because there is none.
He may have meant that the president didn't know it was
exactly
illegal.
right, David.
You know, Ryan, Devin Nunes, the chairman of the House Intelligence Committee, said, look, the president, he's only been a politician for about a year or so. Don't take his words literally. You know, he may not have known what he was doing. He's just saying this. I mean, that's pretty outrageous.
I mean, the outrageous thing is he's right about that in a sense, that the president does act and tweet and say things based on, you know, sort of sketchily sourced press reports rather than relying on, you know, the greatest intelligence service in the world. So, look, we haven't seen evidence of this because there is no evidence. The White House, when they were pressed last week, they sent reporters some clips of some websites with anonymously sourced reports about this. So if they actually had evidence, if they knew that this was true, they would surely be a whole lot more certain about it.
You know,
it wasn't really press reports. It was right-wing radio, you know, that was making these kinds of assertions. We weren't even going as far as the president was going.
No, absolutely right, Wolf, absolutely right. There were reports that were not saying what he said. You had to go several steps beyond that to make the leap. You're right.
Yeah.
You know, the president is a master at knowing how to change a conversation. And don't forget, when this occurred, the conversation was about disarray in the White House and the president getting very agitated at his own staff. So he does that on Friday. He flies to Mar-a-Lago on Saturday, and he tweets these things Saturday morning because, again, what he's trying to do is say, that isn't the story. The story here is the leaking. Yeah. The story here is leaking. It's not what you're writing about and trying to sort of, tell the press, go look in another direction.
Clearly, this was not a successful change.
It was not successful
I would
at all.
say it was a boomerang.
Has the evidence with it. He can release it immediately if he wanted to, if there's evidence. Coming up, WikiLeaks' explosive claim. It just exposed thousands of pages of CIA secrets about how it can hack into your phone, your computer, even some smart TVs.